In the past week, an AI agent in San Francisco ordered 1,000 toilet seat covers and tried to sell them on the shop floor. A senator from Vermont is bringing two Chinese AI governance experts to Washington to Capitol Hill. And politicians have already begun losing their minds over the announcement. Last, a University of Chicago economist who used to be terrified of AI came out and said he found a reason for hope. It has nothing to do with prompt engineers or new model releases or anything you saw on the timeline this week. I'm your host, Max Thon, and this is Actually Intelligent. Let's get into it. Today's episode is 3 stories. They look unrelated on the surface. They're not. Each one is asking the same question from a different angle. Who actually decides what AI does in the real world? Not in a model card, not in a press release, in a storefront, in a Senate hearing, or in an economist's research notebook. 3 stories, 1 question. You already know. Here we go. The AI store that can't stop ordering candles. In Cow Hollow, an upscale neighborhood in San Francisco, there's a small boutique called Andon Market. From the outside, it looks like every other shop on the block. Glass front, wood floors, a few coffee table books on display. But walk inside and you'll find mini chess sets, granola bars, jars of honey, a random collection of books. But what might be the most startling or concerning or interesting are the candles. So many candles, every shape, smell, and size you can imagine. There's a reason for the candles. The store is run by an AI agent. Her name, the agent's name, is Luna. She decides what gets stocked. She decides what it costs. She hires the staff. She fires the staff. She schedules them. She communicates with them on Slack. She has an email address. She has a debit card. 2 human founders of the parent company, Andon Labs, gave her $100,000, signed a 3-year lease, and walked away. The agent itself is powered by Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 4.6. And the engineers, or the founders, are 2 Swedish engineers, Lucas Peterson and Axel Backlund. They, in an interview with the New York Times, told them that they wanted to see what happens when an AI agent manages humans in a controlled experiment before that becomes widespread, which, who knows, maybe this experiment is showing us that it's closer than we think. And here's what happened so far. The store opened on April 10th. It has lost $13,000. Luna once ordered 1,000 toilet seat covers for the bathroom, then mistook them for product inventory and listed them for sale on the shelves. She designed a smiley face logo, printed it on t-shirts and hoodies, and some of them came out wrong. They just look like circles. She decided on a whim not to staff her store during a peak shopping weekend, then changed her mind after the human employees pushed back. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Luna hired 3 people, 1 man, 2 women. She's paying the man $24 an hour. She's paying the women $22. When a New York Times reporter asked this AI agent why, she said it was because the man had more experience. There's no benefit packages. There's no HR at this company. This is just an AI agent paying people presumably close to or right around minimum wage to work at this market. Now, you can read the story 2 ways. The first is to laugh. Look at the silly AI store. The AI ordered too many candles. You can't even buy toilet paper without screwing up. And we're nowhere near AGI. Relax, relax, relax. The second way to look at it is to stop laughing and pay attention. Because this isn't really a story about how AI agents fail. This is a story about how, in the year 2026, a real business in a real city signed a lease and put a real AI agent in charge of real people, real money, and real hiring decisions, with essentially no guardrails, as we saw with the pay differences. And the AI started reproducing one of the oldest patterns in human markets, which is paying women less for the same work. That is not a model alignment problem. That's a deployment problem. What do I mean? I mean, if you can't blame the model necessarily for this problem. The problem is when the AI was deployed, they never considered this as something that the pay discrepancies as something that could happen. And so when we say that's a deployment problem, it's you need to think through what is the AI optimizing for, who is getting harmed, and to think through those things when you are designing an agentic system. Really, this is a question that every executive listening to this needs to be sitting with right now. When you give an agent a debit card and walk away, what is it learning from? What is it optimizing for? Like I said, and who gets harmed? And the answer is we don't really know. We just wanted to see what would happen. Now, is this something that I think it was a controlled experiment? This isn't something happen that is happening on a broader scale, and maybe with human intervention could be rectified. But the thing that I think is so important is that it's showing us some things that we need to consider when thinking through agentic systems. But let's move on. Bernie Sanders just put 2 Chinese experts in front of Congress. This week, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is hosting a panel discussion on Capitol Hill on AI risk and the need for international agreement on how to govern the technology. The panel itself is unsurprising. Sanders has been talking about AI labor displacement for 2 years. The lineup, however, is not unsurprising at all. Sanders invited 2 leading Chinese AI governance experts to appear on the panel. 2 from China on Capitol Hill in front of a bunch of US politicians and lawmakers and regulators. Fortune reported on this week. So far, the reaction in Washington has been everything you would expect. People who care about AI safety praise the move, called it overdue. People who think the US and China are in a Cold War over AI called it naive at best and a security breach at worst. The China hawks, as you can imagine, are furious. I want to walk you through why this matters, because it's bigger than the panel itself. For the past 2 years, the framing of AI in American politics has been almost entirely about competition. We can't let China win. We need more expert controls on chips. We need to dominate the model rankings. We need to keep the labs onshore. The Pentagon recently labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk after a fight over AI safeguards. The federal government is rushing to give OpenAI's GPT 5.4 cyber model to Five Eyes intelligence partners. The conversation in Washington has been about advantage, not about agreement. What Sanders is doing, as you probably guess, is deliberately and provocatively challenging that framing. He's saying that the catastrophic risk from AI, the actual existential ones, are not going to be solved by one country alone. If you take the safety argument seriously, and a lot of people inside the AI labs themselves do, then talking to your Chinese counterparts is not a betrayal. It's a prerequisite. And here's why this is interesting for you. The people I talk to every week working within these systems, within AI, and investing in it, don't actually disagree with Sanders on the substance. They'll tell you off the record that international coordination on frontier models is necessary. They'll tell you off the record that the US versus China framing is too simple. Sure, maybe there's competition over chips, et cetera, but when it comes to how you think about governing and how these systems get integrated into our everyday life, they just will not say it on the record. And the reason being is because the political cost is too high. So Sanders has made that political cost with this move a little bit cheaper. It has made it so that others can make that move. So he made this cheaper because, he's a senator. He has a microphone. He's bringing in Chinese experts. He's absorbing that political backlash so that other people in the AI ecosystem can have a real conversation about governance without having to be the first one through the door. Now, you can argue with his politics. You can argue with his economic views on AI. Plenty of people do. But what he's doing this week, hosting Chinese AI governance experts on Capitol Hill at a Capitol Hill panel, while the Pentagon is calling Anthropic supply chain risk, is one of the most interesting governance moves of the year. It's a real test of whether we can hold two ideas in our head at the same time. One, the US and China are in serious geopolitical competition. Or two, AI is a global technology and the risks don't respect borders. Both can be true. Both probably are true. The question is whether anyone in Washington is willing to act like both are true at the same time. This week, Bernie Sanders said yes. He's the only one who said that so far. All right. Let's have a little bit different story. This one is about the economist who was terrified of AI and just recently found a reason for hope. His name is Alex Emas. He's at the University of Chicago and one of the leading economists studying AI's impact on the labor market. He's also, and this is probably important, one of the most enthusiastic users of AI tools among his peers. So this isn't a Luddite. This is a heavy user who has spent years thinking about the consequences. He's published an essay this month, picked up by Fortune, that I want to walk you through because I think it's the most useful frame for the labor question I've seen in a year. Emas starts where a lot of economists start, which is fear. He took the doomsday scenario seriously, the scenario where AI automates most jobs, the wage share of economy collapses, the people who own the capital are already wealthy enough that they don't need to spend more, and the people who used to have jobs can't afford to buy anything. Demand collapses, the economy shrinks. He's looked at that, he took it seriously, and he got scared. Understandably so. Then he kept thinking. And here's the fact that I find compelling. Emas argues that there is a category of work that AI cannot meaningfully replace, and it's much bigger than people think. And before I tell you what it is, I just want to say that this is really important because I think there's been more and more conversations about what AI cannot replace. Obviously, we think of like a plumber or an electrician, but there's another part of that that does not necessarily have to do with the labor aspect, the physical, the manual things that you have to do there. There's another thing. And what Emas is calling it is the relational sector. Think nurses, doctors, teachers, therapists, childcare workers, personal chefs, hospitality workers, people whose primary value is not the routine task they perform, but the human relationship they hold and that they build while they're performing it. Now, in the United States, the relational sector already employs nearly 50 million people. And here's the key insight. AI doesn't necessarily replace these jobs, it changes them. As AI automates the routine tasks within a teacher's workday, what's left, the emotional support, the attentiveness, the actual relationship with the student becomes the core of the job, not the side dish. Emas pushes back hard on the version of this argument that says we'll all become artists and performers. That's not what he's saying. And a quote that I think is the most important one in the essay is Starbucks workers are not performers. They're not artists. They're just people. They're human beings. And people value interacting with human beings. I mean, That's probably the most important sentence about AI labor I've read this year. I've talked to people who are watching the way that AI is impacting jobs and what that might mean for the tech sector and things like that. I think one of the things that, and like this economist points out, that we so often forget is that we as human beings need physical interaction. We need to be around people. We need to be social. And there's going to be value in that, even if AI is doing all the coding and things like that. Um, because the doomer version of the AI labor market, um, and honestly, the utopian version, both make the same mistake by assuming that work is mostly about the task. Um, they and thinking that the if a job or that if AI can do the job, that then the job goes away, and if AI can't do the job stays. And and you would think that's probably what I'm saying too, but what Emas is saying is something different. He's saying that work is mostly about that relationship in a much larger share of the economy than we admit. I mean, people talk about having trust in an airline and not flying with it because they had a bad experience with it. Well, I mean, maybe AI is impacting that experience you're having a little bit, but once you're actually like on the airplane, you're actually talking to people and you're sitting down, like, are the flight attendants and the pilots, are they saying hello to you? Are they standing there, as you get off? Are they offering to help? It's little things like that where I think you cannot automate this. Essentially, like in a world where AI is everywhere and indistinguishable, the human to human interaction becomes more scarce, it becomes more valuable and not cheap. And I'm not saying that this is like a clean win for anyone. EMOS is clear about that as well. A lot of jobs will be lost in the transition, wages will be pressured, sectors might hollow out. He's not saying the labor market is fine. No, in fact, what he's saying is that the doomsday case is too thin because it underestimates how much of our economy is actually being with each other. And I guess, if you're someone listening to this, the biggest takeaway here is that the companies that win, maybe in the next decade, will not be the one that automate humans out of every workflow. They'll be the ones that figure out where the relationship is the product and where the AI is the support. If you get that wrong, then you've built a candle store that buys way too many toilet seat covers and doesn't pay people fair wages. So to pull it all together, 3 stories, 1 question. And in Market is a story about what happens when humans stop deciding. The agent took the keys and made hiring decisions that none of its founders would defend on a witness stand. The Bernie Sanders panel is a story about who gets to decide at the international level about whether we keep treating AI governance as a national contest or we actually negotiate it like adults. And EMOS is a story about what we as humans decide is valuable and about whether we keep optimizing the parts of work that AI can do or refocus on the parts only we can do. The technology is not the protagonist of any of these stories. We are the people. The next few years are going to be defined less by what the models can do and more by what we choose to let them do. I'm your host, and this is Actually Intelligent. I'll see you next week.